I'm just hitting record, people. What did you just say, Captain Ryan?
You gotta be a little crazy to be in the charter boat fishing industry or any sort of commercial
Yes.
fishing industry or anything along that lines because crazy's gonna get you a long ways.
So what we're diving into today is the hot, I'm calling it hot, I think it's going to be hot if it isn't already, Monsters of God documentary series on HBO. And we watched episode 1 last night, and I loved it for so many reasons we're going to dive into. And Captain Ryan, what do you think?
You know, I loved it. I just have this. I'm so compassionate for animals now, so it was really kind of. I like the message behind it, but on the other end of it, I just hated this. Like you hate to see what's the word for it? You know, shit's going on behind the scenes, and when you actually you kind of look a blind eye to it, but when you actually see it, see the evidence, and you're like, man, it really sucks.
So Ryan took it a little more literal and analytical and, let's say, logical than I did, which is totally how we roll, actually.
Yep. Yeah.
Even bringing in our human design. So I was like, saw this big scope of all these other things, and Ryan kept getting really sad at certain scenes with the animals. So, and I love animals too, by the way. This is not it. And actually, that's what ended up happening of how I heard about this series, because about a month or so ago, I ended up going down a rabbit hole about snakes, and I ended up following Tyler Nolan Tattoos on Instagram. He, I believe I'm gonna call it like he's also has like a zoo. Let's say I might be paraphrasing this incorrectly, but follow him on Instagram. He's a really cool guy, and tattoos and snakes and venomous snakes, and I think he's got some alligators. So we got a whole lot going on there. So anyhow, so he is going to be a guest feature, I believe, as sharing perhaps experience in this lane on the show. So he talked about the show, and I was like, hey, what's this? So here we are. So I have this opening question, besides Ryan talking about being a little crazy in the business. But what happens to a genuine calling when unresolved human patterns get layered on top of it, right?
That's interesting. Yeah.
So if you're a little crazy, right, like
Yeah.
Ryan was saying, if you're a little crazy, and then you have this calling. So both of the gentlemen that have been featured so far, Hank Molt and Tom Crutchfield, both of them had this calling since they were kids, really young, to work with reptiles. They loved reptiles. And then Hank started it first in terms of having a business in terms of selling reptiles, and then Tom kind of joined on to that bandwagon, and you could say copied, which is part of this whole piece of the documentary series, and kind of went from there, right?
That's right.
So copying is one of the patterns that I wrote down when I was thinking about this documentary series. So comparison, copying, greed, obsession, energetics, health, what's your calling? So basically you could say identity, resentment, which was definitely clear in the opening.
Yes.
Right?
A lot of resentment.
Blame and avoidance. And that is what I find is so fascinating between the two gentlemen, Hank and Tom. You know, who was saying who cares and looks pretty damn good for being someone in his 80s.
Yeah.
And who is the other person who has a lot of blame and resentment and was actually the person who did the copying of the other person, and quite frankly doesn't look so great. Right?
Exactly.
So there's a lot of lines and things that you can kind of draw some conclusions on.
Yes.
And how people get kind of caught up in things in their head.
They do, and it's like when you let that drive you, it wrecks you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It wrecks you. It wrecks you in your skill set. Original ideas don't come across, and then you just become what's the word for it? Do you want to live your life copying other people? That is like not but that's up to them. It's some people, it's in their genetics to live like that. But genetics can be like you can you can take a different path.
Yeah, you can take a different path. You can recognize that pattern, and you can see that that likely doesn't serve you and what you're truly gifted with in this lifetime, and take a different path. Work on your skill set. That is your gift versus copying other people. And even if you do end up, let's say, copying someone or mirroring them, how did it go so south that you end up blaming and resenting the person that you were copying? It's fascinating. And granted, we're just in episode 1, so I'm super excited to see how this unfolds, and I'm super curious. But when you look at it just from this lens on episode 1, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think there was really more, for me, it was great seeing all the reptiles. I was a reptile kid. I would bring turtles home, and I would try to say, oh, can we keep them? Then for me, I would be like, try to find, I'd bring more turtles home, and then my parents were like, what's going on? So then I would, then they would make me let them go back into the wild, and I thanked them for that, because I had that, I could see myself, because I love turtles. I loved having them around, and so, but I could see the personalities. I could see, but what really got me was these two guys and the copying. How one guy just was like, and then the other guy was like, he saw what he was doing, and he was so level-headed, and he was like, okay, just let him keep going. He's going to implode.
Yep. And he waited for him.
And he waited. And it's funny.
That was like such a cool scene. Sorry if this is a spoiler for anyone, but there's a lot in this show. We shouldn't be spoiling.
That is like the message for.
Yes.
It's like, I tell you what, I see it, and I am like, what's the word for it? I am consistently copied on certain things, and I just sit back. I used to get like. And I could see how that one guy was like, I felt his change, he'd be like, I'd be mad, the guy did it, and, then he like, now it's like, it's so hard to copy somebody else's blueprint, and you can't literally do it. You literally can't be that other guy in words, in anything, in your movements, how you create, you cannot, because you are not built like that other individual.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's just really... I don't know, I'm going to call it a universal law. Like, to copy someone else doesn't work. And this has been a huge conversation over the years. And I think lots of people go through this. And you just have to remind yourself that it's the long game. So even if they copy you at first, it's really a lot from a lack energy. And let's see how it works in, are they still around in 3 years?
I know.
Most people are not. They don't even make it like 3 weeks, let alone 3 years. And it's a long game.
Yeah.
And I remember this was such a fascinating thing that I went through when I was in sales. So when Ryan and I were in Minnesota and I was looking for a job, and I had just been laid off, and I knew we wanted to move to Florida. So someone called me, a recruiter. The recruiter called and said, this company from Germany is starting a jewelry store in Fort Myers, Florida, and they are going to be like this other jewelry store called Best of Everything that's really popular in Naples. I knew absolutely nothing about Best of Everything. I didn't know the landscape of Florida. I knew nothing. I interviewed for the job. I did not get it. But at the time, I was disappointed, but I was excited because I thought this was all going to work out so magically that we could go to Fort Myers and stay at his aunt's house. But none of that worked out. So anyhow, fast forward 3 years later, I kid you not, 3 years later, I end up getting a line of sandals that I loved called the Liza B. I was super happy. I was so excited. That was magic in itself that I got that line to sell on the road. And Best of Everything was their number one customer. So naturally then I got to work with Best of Everything, who was an amazing customer. She's just wonderful. And the store that copied her had closed after like a year. And she was still thriving, doing her thing. And it was just like this crazy turn of like the universe and events of what is really meant to be and really meant to happen, and who really is meant to be doing what they're doing, and who is just trying to copy a business model that wasn't meant for them to be copying. It was just a fascinating experience, and I think that just changed my whole lens on copycats. and that it's a long game, and you need to be respectful for the person who actually originally started the business model.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to share a story, and this is something that happened many years, like year 2 as a charter boat captain.
Oh yeah, it was a long time ago.
Year 2 as a charter boat captain, and I was at Tavernier Creek Marina, and I had Good Karma up in the front at the time, and I was next to a captain that was his name was Captain Joe Petrucco, and Joe was very well known in the sport fishing industry at that time. I actually kind of grew up like kind of watching Joe, watching him on TV shows. And then to be able to come into the slip next to Joe was quite the honor for me. Joe was when I started out, I said, you got to be a little crazy to be in this industry.
Yes.
I was not and I was still very new, and I didn't understand what crazy really was. And Joe was crazy good, and he was fierce. He was that guy was like a machine. He could, I look at the industry now and who's all these guys, that guy could kick everybody's ass, man. He was really good, and his breed is basically, those guys are have moved on, but he was freaking good, man, really good. And I didn't have any mentors, and Joe didn't take a liking to me too much because it's such a competitive thing, and down here, but as we got into it, and meaning that as we got to know each other a little bit, we had a mutual, what's the word for it? Kind of it was a mutual
respect.
Yeah, a mutual respect. And Joe once in a while would see me struggle. He's like, "Hey, man," he'd get me aside and said, "Listen, this is what you need to do. If you got someplace to fish, you need to fish this." He would bring me once in a while. He said, "I see you're struggling. I got some bait for you." I was still learning bait, and he's like, he would bring back in a will of pilchards, and that he had extra. "I'm gonna get you some pilchards today." Joe saw that I was really good at yellowtail fishing. Joe was not good at yellowtail fishing. He hated it. He was always catching small yellowtails because he was good at everything else. So I helped Joe in that aspect of it. So Joe got some spray shields, okay? And I was like, and at that time I was like, man, and I didn't know that we didn't have the internet. You didn't know, and these things you learned about, like hoop nets and all this stuff, we didn't have that because guys kept it really quiet. Bally hoops didn't exist. Social media wasn't there. So Joe would show me this stuff. And then I saw Joe get these spray shields, and I was like, man, I came home, I talked to Melinda, I said, you know what, we need to get these spray shields for Good Karma. Melinda stopped me dead in my tracks, and she said, we are not going to copy Joe. You are going to ask Joe about the spray shields and say, hey, I'm thinking about getting spray shields. I've seen them. How do you like yours? And then say that you're not going to copy him. And he said, get Joe's blessing before you get those spray shields. And I went and talked to Joe. I said, hey, I really love these, that these would be great for Good Karma. And he's like, you need to get them. Here's the name, here's who to call, and this is how long it's going to take. And that was his way of giving me a blessing to do it. That is the way that that laid home to me that day. That was I still remember it. I still hold that to me. So when I was going through this stuff mentally, and I saw guys just blatantly copying content, all this other stuff, I was like, man, wouldn't it have been cool if they would have reached out and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, contacting somebody. But
it just doesn't happen that way.
It doesn't happen that way.
But I think your point is, because I forgot this story, and R.I.P. to Captain Joe Prosciutto.
Yeah, Joe.
He passed away several years ago. Ryan did a podcast. I'd have to try and find it. That was a complete dedication to Captain Joe. So, so if you're out there and you know, then you know. But I just wanted to say that for the record. But my point is respect.
Yep.
Respect.
Man,
we're lacking respect in this world. Like, it's bananas.
Yeah,
it's like respect.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's the energetics.
Yeah.
Like I wrote down for the through lines and the patterns is the energetics of respect. Like, that's like a huge thing. And I cannot believe that someone who doesn't do that doesn't go through the process like that, doesn't have rumination and mind loops. Like, I just can't believe that. And rumination and mind loops is what leads to health problems. These are things to think about. This is cortisol levels in your body that lead to stress and weight gain,
heart attacks.
Like, so when you think about just the core fundamentals of if you are copying, if you're not being respectful, if you're being greedy, and greed isn't always just about money. People think greed is money, but it's not always about money. Sometimes it's just this inability, this like constant craving that you're just not having enough, right? And that's what I see sometimes in the fishing lane, and this is obvious in this documentary, that the greed, isn't even sometimes the money. It's the fact that they were able to do all this stuff and get all these, reptiles. I believe you can see the energetics, and like I said, this will be really interesting to see how it unfolds, of Hank versus Tom. Who is like, yeah, whatever, this is what happened. And the other one's like blaming and avoiding dealing with patterns. And, even Hank mentioned Tom's eating and his cleanliness, and it's obvious. Like, it's so obvious.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's like, yep, there you go.
That was the best part.
There you go.
I was like, it's funny is that that's so true, because you could tell.
Yeah.
I had so much, I was like, I got to thinking of certain things, and I was like, oh my God. I wonder what that guy's house looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other one that I thought was so fascinating was Steve Levy, who is the gentleman in the hospital. And, he's decided, he made a choice. I mean, these are all choices, people. These are choices. So he made a choice to work with Hank, and he said he was up for the adventure. Well, then don't go like hating on him later. Like, you made a choice. You made a choice, and that's a risky business. And if you make a choice to play, it's like anything. I guess if you make a choice to be in the drug world, like, you're making a choice. It is, you're not dealing with the things that are illegal. Like, you made a choice. So how did that end up, coming into play with now where he is, right? In a hospital bed. So when someone's life becomes increasingly chaotic and stressful, and other areas of their life are happening alongside of it, where does it affect your health? Where does it affect your relationship, your sleep habits, and your self-care? Like, this all goes together. All of these patterns go together. And it's just fascinating. So I'm like in love with the show as much as I'm in love with like learning about exotics. Like, I think it's just fascinating because I think it just all ties together like really interestingly, and I'm very curious about all of it.
Yeah, no, I am too. I think it's great. It's an awesome show.
I hope you like our podcast. We would love to hear. This goes on YouTube, so if someone has their thoughts to contribute, I would love to hear what you have to say in the comments on YouTube. That would be incredible. Like I said, I mean, we're not claiming to be experts here. That we're just sharing like how fascinating this whole episode was, and I just think there's so much tied into snakes in terms of somatics, and that's actually why I got interested in snakes to begin with. And I actually have an Instagram where I posted about how I ended up seeing a snake in our backyard, which was really kind of wild. And the snake and I had a moment. Like, it didn't run away. It didn't go away. We looked at each other for a good like 5 minutes, and then it slithered away very slowly. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think there's a lot there with fear, and I could speak about that with fear and religion and what we've done to snakes. And if you get that, you get that. And if you don't believe, then that's okay too. So anyhow, but my website is melindavanfleet.com. My Instagram is the Melinda Van Fleet. And Ryan?
My Instagram is goodkarmasportfishing_FL_keys, and my website is goodkarmasportfishing.com.
So thank you so much for listening. Please share our podcast. I hope it helped you like have some type of wake-up call about these conversations, and also tune into this documentary series, Monsters of God, on HBO. It's incredible. Kudos to everyone involved. And wrap it up, Captain Ryan.
Yeah, and remember, anytime you're fishing, it's all good.
Thanks for listening.